Welcome to episode 71 of the Valley Sports Talk podcast. Um, this time, there's actually some pretty decent hockey players that have worn the number 71, including Evgeny Malkin, Mike Ribeiro, Peter Sikora, Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno, apparently Wendell Clark wore 71, and the newest Stanley Cup champion, William Karlsson. Congratulations to the Vegas Golden Knights, who beat a very defeated looking Florida team last night with a score of 9-2.
9-3. Give them the respect they
And
deserve.
sorry, I forgot that Sam Reinhart scored that goal with like a minute left.
Yeah. Yeah, that
9-3.
was before we get to that, I've been hearing word on the street is you're throwing some shade. So I want to give you your opportunity to make yourself sound like a very, very athletic and very championship-esque human being and tell us all what you did on the weekend.
Oh yeah.
'Cause I've heard you're bragging about it.
Who was I bragging to? Who said that?
Like,
Like Ramus?
mhm.
Oh, well, yeah. Anyways, on the weekend, we were at Brandon's girlfriend's cottage, where we go to school in North Bay, Ontario. And we had our second ever beer Olympics, as they call it. Basically, it's just a bunch of us get together from all over, mainly Southern Ontario, and then me and Brandon, of course, and a couple others. We all go together for one day, and we have a sort of they're all beach games, so like washer toss, Beersby, stuff like that. And we had hosted, or Bren, we had done one in the winter time, while school was going on a weekend. And me and I won that one with my partner. And then this past weekend we had new partners, and I again was victorious. It's not like we expected anything else different, but
Yeah,
yeah.
so I guess Noah's just the greatest athlete of all time. It is.
I am literally the GOAT. Call me the GOAT.
Hmm. Well, congratulations to you. If it's any consolation prize, I came first in the round robin and then
Sure.
choked in the
You can
playoff.
you can have that.
But it doesn't mean much. Yeah, it was cool. We went and did costumes this time. You guys were the Blue Jays, wore some Toronto Blue Jays jerseys. That was pretty cool. We were the Hillbillies. I let the gut hang out. And all in all, it was a very sunny day, a little bit of wind, so it's a perfect day.
Mm-hmm. Eat some
Um,
beans in the water, cool
yeah,
off.
exactly. Water was a
Warmer
little
than I
cold.
thought it was going to be. I was expecting it to be a bit more frigid, but it actually wasn't
Me
that bad. Like it
too,
was
actually.
bearable.
But I
It
guess
was actually it was
that
swimmable.
week of
It wasn't. It was more than bearable. It was swimmable.
yeah, that week of 38 helped, I guess, eh?
Probably.
Yeah, so I mean, talking about the playoffs, Noah did say the Vegas Golden Knights won. Um, Noah also did say they beat a battered and bruised Florida Panthers team. Injuries did come out. Um, Aaron Ekblad broke his foot, dislocated his shoulder
Torn
twice, and tore
oblique.
his oblique, only causing him to miss one game in the Stanley Cup
And he
Finals.
and he had a concussion. He got pulled from a concussion test.
Yeah,
I don't know if he actually had a concussion, but he was like pulled from a game for a possible concussion.
yeah,
He still went out
um,
and scored.
yeah,
And
crazy. Big goal. It got the momentum sort of back on their side for a bit until Vegas ran away. Um, Radko Gudas suffered a high ankle sprain, which normally is about a 6 week rehab. Um, he missed the one game where he got hit. Um,
yeah, the
Other than
barbershop.
that, he didn't miss any time. Um, Kachuk had a fractured sternum, I believe, from the hit after he hit Jack Eichel. Um, Someone got back at him, and I believe that's where it happened. I could be wrong. Um, and was there one more? Or am I wrong? I don't know.
Uh,
There's probably more that just haven't come out yet.
there was a forward that got hurt, Lusterinen, but I think he got hurt in the um I think he got hurt the last game of the Carolina series, but anyways.
Yeah, true. So I mean, I'm sure there was people hurt on both teams, but that's just kind of the playoffs. That's what happens. The healthiest team normally wins, and I mean, like I said, that's the playoffs for you. You can't really use it as an excuse. And Paul Maurice said there's no excuse.
Yeah, they
They
said
lost right.
they quoted that they weren't using this as an excuse, but the guys gave everything they did, and yeah, for sure.
Some other news: Jonathan Marchessault won
Right?
playoff MVP, 25 points, 13 goals, 12 assists. Some thought it should have been Jack Eichel,
First
who had one
undrafted
more.
player to win the Conn Smythe since Wayne Gretzky, which is a
Yeah, massive.
pretty
That's
amazing
cool.
feat.
Plus, he was one of the originals, and
Yeah, one of the original
Florida
Misfits.
Florida was the team who let him go. So um, that must have been a little bit extra confidence for him heading into the series. But also big props to Jack Eichel, who led the playoffs in scoring with 26 points. I think maybe the only reason he didn't win it is because compared to Jonathan Marchessault's 13 goals, Jack Eichel only had six, sorry, but he had 20 assists, which is crazy. Um, I mean, there's a lot of people that could have been in this conversation. You had Mark Stone, who tied for third in playoff scoring, who had a massive hat trick in game five. And
Yes,
then someone else you got to talk about is Aiden Hill,
one ton.
who was massive. He looked great again in game five. I mean, he let in two in the third period, but um, just from watching the game, both those teams, it wasn't even really hockey at that point. Both those teams were just waiting for the clock to go down. So I could see where Hill's head might not have been in it because they already knew they were win. Oh, sorry, they already knew they were winning, and that would have been hard to keep concentrating. So, um, really in the heat of the moment, he only let in one goal in the first period, and all playoffs he looked great and well deserving.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of crazy that, we mentioned this before, that one, I think he's going to get a decent contract from a team this year, whether it's from Vegas or not. Time will only tell. But like the fact that they traded him for a fourth round pick last year, and he came into the season as their third goalie, or he came into the playoffs as their third goalie, and he had to jump in um and he led his team to the Stanley Cup Finals. So I mean, props to him. He got a shot and he made the most of it.
100%. And just another shout out again to Jack Eichel. That's just for him. That's a huge win. His first time in the Stanley Cup playoffs, leads the league in playoff scoring. Um, was I mean obviously drafted second to Connor McDavid, so always looked as a second. Um, and I mean Buffalo didn't really work out for him with injuries and just being a bad team, and now I mean he won a cup before McDavid, obviously, and a lot of people thought he deserved the playoff MVP. So props to Eichel as well.
Yep, and another not a cool fact, but an interesting fact that since 2008, only one first round pick has won, or first overall pick has won the cup.
It's crazy, eh?
That being that being Nathan McKinnon last year.
Yeah, I mean it's hard because they demand so much money, and obviously McKinnon was on one of the greatest deals in the NHL at the time, and normally the cap space that first overall picks take, it's hard to build a team around them, but yeah, good for him. Quickly about sorry, it's not loading. The Florida Panthers and their sort of decisions to make heading into next year. Obviously, they have um most of their players signed still. Um, but I think the biggest thing is you have Sergei Bobrovsky making $10 million. You have Spencer Knight making $4.5 million, and you have Alex Lyon, who is a UFA, and I didn't even realize he's 30 years old. So are you letting go of Alex Lyon after? because I mean, I guess you could put him in the AHL, but you're definitely like Bobrovsky and Knight have to play, right? So
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because Knight I know was in the player assistance program with whatever the heck he was dealing with, whether it was injury, whether it was drug related. But he was a very high draft pick, and they have a lot. I know a lot of people have a lot of talk about him, about how good he's going to be, and he's shown how good he's going to be at like a junior level, and even in the AHL level, he's been a great goalie. But I don't think there's any way you can get rid of Bobrovsky. I don't think any team's going to want to take that $10 million for what he's got at least 4 seasons left. I don't know if you
uh
have.
3 more years.
Maybe maybe as an expiring in 2 years, a team might then if you can retain a bit. But even like I don't think they go buyout market with him. I think that's too much of a hit. I think honestly that they should just roll with Bobrovsky and Knight. I know Bobrovsky's getting up there in age and Knight's young. But Bobrovsky played very well in the playoffs. I don't think his play really tailed off too much for the fact that Florida shouldn't have won the cup. I just think that Vegas sort of was a different monster and they sort of just dominated Florida. So yeah, I think like a split, like a sort of like a platoon situation, if you're talking baseball terms, between Knight and Bobrovsky, and that's two really good. It's like a 1A, 1B sort of type tandem.
Yeah, and not really for next year because really on defense all they have is Radko Gudas and Mark Stahl to resign and on forwards their only UFA is Eric Stahl, so both Stahls are UFAs right now. But in like two, not this season, but next season, you have $14.5 million signed to your goalies. And in 2 years, you have Brendan Montour, who's a UFA, and he's only making 3.5. That's going to go up. You got Josh Mahura, who's young, only making 925,000, who's going to be an RFA. You got Sam Reinhart. You have Anthony Duclair. You got players like that, Anton Lundell, who are going to be UFAs next year. Like how do you work with that with having $14.5 million signed between goalies?
Like I said, I think in a couple, maybe 3 years is a bit. I think maybe a team would take on Sergei Bobrovsky, maybe if you can retain 30%. So if a team's only paying him 7 mil, maybe a team like that takes on maybe a rebuilding team. Maybe some team will take 50% of his salary. Kind of like in Arizona, kind of like a broker sort of situation. So Florida may be able to get that off. And maybe just maybe they go into a buyout situation, but they're kind of 10 million bucks for like what by the end of his contract, he's got to be what, like 35, 36.
He's
He's what?
34 right now. He'll be 35, 36, 30. He'll be 38 when he's a UFA.
Wow, yeah. So like they kind of have themselves into a situation. I think if anyone's going to be more expandable or more of a trade candidate, it would look to be Spencer Knight because he's a younger goalie. He hasn't proven himself yet, but he's only making 4.5. I think a team would take a flyer on him, considering how highly touted he was. But that Bobrovsky contract I think is a bit too hard and too much for teams to want to take on, especially get him getting up there in age and not playing to the best of his abilities the last couple seasons, with the exception to this year's playoffs.
Yeah, and just last question on the Florida Panthers. Obviously, like I just said, they're basically going to be running back with the same core they have. I know they were only 3 wins away from the Stanley Cup, so it's kind of a weird question to ask, but do you think this team can win the Stanley Cup?
Totally. Coming into the year, I considered them. Obviously, I thought at the trade last year, I thought Calgary had won it, but Tkachuk's just a really good player. Like he's definitely top 10 right now in the league. Some would argue top five after the way he played. He's a Hart Trophy finalist. Barkov had a bit of a disappointing playoffs. He was under a point per game, but you still have a lots of players to go around. I don't know. I definitely think that they can win a Stanley Cup. I think that they're gonna have to upgrade their defense. Their defense sort of are weak. Like nothing against Mark Stahl, but he's not a championship caliber defenseman on a team. I think sort of Florida just had like a flash in the pan this year. But I definitely think that they have the right pieces. They have star power. They have depth at forward. It's just their defense and maybe goalie situation. That's a question mark.
Yeah, fair enough. Moving to the Vegas side of things, again, um, they don't really have anyone big to sign either. Their top six defensemen who played in the playoffs are all still signed. The only forward who had big play time, who would be a UFA, is Ivan Barbashev. Um, Goalies, obviously, they have Logan Thompson, who's still signed for $766,000 for 2 more years. But Brossoit, Hill, and Quick are all free agents. So, what, if any, of those goalies do you think they'll bring back? And what do you think the price will be for Ivan Barbashev after playing top 6 minutes on Vegas?
Ivan Barbashev, I believe, is gone. Just like you could see that or we saw that Vegas had the highest cap hit in the league this year. They were like $12 million over, but they were able to sort of maneuver around that through LTIR. So I think Barbashev's gone. You know, he was only making about 2.5, I believe, in on his prior contract. I think he's probably close to 4x4, 5x5, you know, in that range, 4.5. He's sort of like he'll probably get a sort of similar deal. I think he's a better player than, but a similar deal to Bunting. I think I'd rather have Barbashev than Bunting at this moment in time. But I think that they'll sort of get similar deals. As for the goalies, the way Aiden Hill played, like I said earlier, I think he's going to get a bigger contract from a different team. But I would not be surprised if Vegas did bring in Jonathan Quick to be a veteran backup. You know, Logan Thompson had a great year until he got hurt. He's only like 25, I believe, 24, 25, maybe 26. But I think he's their goalie of the future. You know, he showed it this year. He's an all-star. But bringing in a guy like Jonathan Quick, who didn't play very much for them at towards the end of the year, but being a veteran backup who can play 40, 35, 40 games and give Thompson the rest of the workload is a good backup signing, in my opinion. As for Brossoit, who knows where he goes, honestly.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that pretty much wraps up our Stanley Cup talk. Congratulations to Vegas once again, and again Florida, same thing, good season. Moving on to some just kind of NHL news. This one kind of relates to you, as the New York Rangers are a very good team in your division. Hired Pierre Laviolette as their new head coach. So I mean, he's basically trying to coach every team in the Metro. But
Basically,
what are your thoughts
he's got
on that?
like what, he's got 3 of the 7 down already.
He's done now the Rangers. He's done the Capitals. He's done the Flyers.
Oh,
Has he done any of the other ones?
that's a bit. That's all I
No.
believe.
That's still quite a bit for one division.
No, no kidding. He's very familiar with the Metro. I don't know if the Rangers like the way his system was in the Cap for Washington. Just because he's familiar coaching against that division. But yeah, I don't know. I've never really liked Laviolette much as a coach. I just don't think he just hasn't had the most success. He wasn't the coach when Washington won the Cup, eh?
I no,
Was
no,
it?
he was
Yeah.
not.
Anyways, I don't. He hasn't had the most success. He just keeps getting gigs. Um, but yeah, he's always like that. He's always been on a coach like players on like teams that are like just barely competitive, like bubble teams, sort of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe, maybe. I hope the Rangers suck, honestly.
So get this. So we said he had coached three of the teams. He has coached where is it here? The Capitals, the Predators, the Flyers, the Islanders,
When did he coach
and the
the Islanders?
Carolina. He might
Carolina?
have been, but he's might have been an assistant,
So
but
he's
he's
the only
been
two
on
teams.
the
The only two teams that Metro he hasn't coached is Pittsburgh and the Devils
yeah,
and
because
Columbus.
he won the Stanley Cup with the Hurricanes in '06.
So he must have been an
Um,
assistant back then.
yeah, and then he's been to the Cup Finals with the Flyers and the Predators,
Wow.
losing both of those. But speaking, we might as well keep in the Metro and tie a little bit of both our favorite teams into the mix. Jason Spezza follows Kyle Dubas and joins Pittsburgh as an assistant GM.
I mean, I think we both saw this coming, or some sort of
Yeah,
maybe not AGM, but we both saw this. We saw this coming at some point that we thought Spezza was going to join Pittsburgh, even just to follow Dubas, but I don't really have an issue with this signing. I wouldn't have been shocked if he brought in as the actual GM. I still wouldn't be surprised if it's Toronto's AGM. I forget his name, but
Brandon Pridham.
yeah, Pridham. I would not be surprised if Dubas brings him in just based off how familiar he is. He's familiar with Spezza, which is the reason I think he brought him in. Not that I think that Pittsburgh's just going to turn into the Pittsburgh Maple Leafs, but like as being a guy with being the president of hockey of the general operations of the hockey team, I think you gotta bring in somewhat sort of familiar faces and people you work well with. If you hire somebody brand new, you only go through an interview process with them, right? So you may not know them. So I think some sort of familiarity is good to an extent. Um, but yeah, I got no issues with it personally as a Pittsburgh fan.
Yeah, like you said, I think we knew this was going to happen, and I mean, Kyle Dubas is a very smart mind, and if you're Jason Spezza, you're trying to get into the game. You've already been with him for a year now, and if you like the way he operates, I mean, you might as well stay with him, right? So
Mhm.
I think it's good for Pittsburgh. I think it's good for Kyle Dubas. I think it's good for Jason Spezza. Kind of works out for everybody. But like you said, I mean, GMs like their players, so I wonder which Toronto free agent is going to end up a Pittsburgh Penguin. Did it bring Zach
Um,
Aston Reese back?
Austin Matthews in 2 years.
You think so? I
Nope.
think I think I wouldn't be surprised if you see somebody like David Camp
I
join
would love
Pittsburgh.
David Kemp as my fourth line center next year.
Yeah, wins a lot of face-offs, good
I'd
on the
have no
penalty
issues
kill.
with that.
Yeah, I bet you wouldn't. I kind of wanted to jump into the NBA. I know we haven't really been talking about the playoffs, but this playoffs just ended as well, with the Denver Nuggets kind of dominating the Miami Heat, winning in five. I thought it was a dominant performance by Jokic. I thought it was a dominant performance by Jamal Murray. Aaron Gordon looked really good on. Never really had a Jimmy game. Um, Bam looked good, but the surrounding shooting, like Max Strus, and Caleb Martin, never really got going. I don't know if you watched any of the games. I don't know if you got any
Yeah,
any
I watched
opinions,
game
but
five actually, and then parts of other games, but I don't know, I'm not the biggest on basketball anymore. I like playing it, but not so much watching it. But yeah, the way I took out it, congrats, another Canadian got a championship, Jamal Murray. Um, congrats to him. He's from only about 5 hours away from us, so pretty local enough. But yeah, the one thing I was really not shocked, but like interested to see is that Denver didn't really have a second superstar. Like, like some teams need like more than one superstar to win. Neither of these teams really did. They had Jimmy Butler, who's you could say is a superstar, you could say is a star, and then obviously Jokic is a superstar, top three player in the league. But they sort of had good players and then role players sort of around them. I thought that Aaron Gordon was honestly one of the best players in this series. He's great defensively and then he could chip in offensively when you need him. He had that 27-point game in game four. He was very impressive in my opinion. I think he was sort of the key to their success at some point. Obviously, Jokic and Jamal are going to get you buckets. Um, and then I think that Miami just sort of like same thing with Florida, like the Panthers. They sort of a flash. They were sort of maybe a flash in the pan. They were both 8 seeds, both 16 seeds technically. And I think they just ran to a team that they just were unmatched with.
yeah, I would have to agree. I do have some sort of question. I have a question sort of I want to see your opinion. Obviously, the Warriors have won as a super team before, but if you look at the last three championships, you got Denver, who was draft grown. You have Golden State, who with the team they won with was homegrown.
Yeah.
And then you have Milwaukee, who was homegrown. Do you think super teams is sort of a thing in the past and hard to do just because chemistry wise, when you build super teams, it means you got a lot of people that are looking for the ball, and um, you might get that tension there where like Jamal Murray and Jokic got there's never going to be bad blood there. Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, there's never going to be bad blood there. Like Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Giannis, there's never going to be bad blood. So do you think it's super teams are sort of a thing of the past, or do you think we're just having a lucky streak here?
So the thing that I think about super teams is it comes to cap issue. And when you see a team, actually you mentioned it, I think it's more the chemistry part. Um, Whenever you have a super team, like you bring in guys like, KD and Kyrie and James Harden all in the nets, they didn't have anybody after that to sort of put the ball in the net to be a primary ball handler. So there's times that KD or Kyrie were both hurt, James Harden went off, they don't have somebody to really control that offense or to give you bench scoring, which I think is the main reason why Denver was good. They had Jokic as their number one, Jamal brought the ball up, then they had guys who are sort of off ball but can score, like Michael Porter Jr. KCP is a great 3 and D. And then the big thing for me is the bench scoring. I don't think that I'm just using like Phoenix this year, for example, or Brooklyn in the past. Like, I think they have so much money tied up between these three guys that if something happens or if these three aren't clicking, then the team's just completely screwed. Like, players are gonna have off nights, um, every now and then they're going to need somebody else to score the ball. And I don't think that when you have a super team, unless you have a team of like the Warriors did, like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, a prime Draymond Green, Kevon Looney, players like that, I think that it can work whenever you have amazing players. But like, and now in this day and age, whenever there's a sort of a load management sort of thing, which I personally don't like, and not going to get into that, but I just think that you got to look for players that fit your superstar well and just work around him instead of just trying to bring in as many stars as possible.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry,
Like you said,
so
um,
to sum it up, to answer your question, I don't think super teams are a thing of the past. I just think that the Denver and even this Miami team were like built better, in my opinion.
yeah, fair enough. And like you said, I was listening to a stat in the first round of the playoffs, and the Phoenix Suns bench averaged the least amount of points of a playoff team in I can't remember how long, but it's been a very long time since a playoff team bench has averaged that little points. So you make a good point there
Another
to
another
kind of
example, another
oh, yeah.
example quickly, sorry, before you get in, is LA. Like the
Mhm.
Lakers have LeBron, who's still 38, he's playing great. AD's hurt, but then I really like the pieces they brought around them. D'Lo is a great player. Not I wouldn't say he's a star, but he's a good player. He knows his role. Vanderbilt knows his role. Austin Reeves knows his role. Like the Lakers didn't win the finals, but they got to the conference finals as a 7 seed just because I think they did a great job at the trade deadline, building players around LeBron and not going and getting that third superstar that made. Like that's why I don't think Russ Westbrook worked. I think he was too ball dominant and he didn't fit with LeBron and AD.
Yeah, it really showed in a difference of years. Like last year, they didn't even make the playoffs, and it's because of the supporting cast. But like you said, they added all those people. Plus, I don't think you mentioned Hachimura, who was great in
Sorry,
the
yeah.
playoffs as well.
Malik
Um,
Beasley, guys like that. They had
yeah,
they had players around LeBron instead of just going out and getting a star or
yeah, and the team
all
of
dominant player.
this year makes, like you said, makes the conference finals, and the team last year doesn't even make playoffs. So, it definitely shows how big your bench is. Yes, you could have superstars in AD and LeBron, but you still have to have a good bench to make a deep run. Um, to end the podcast off, just to keep with the NBA, I know the NBA Hall of Fame gets kind of knocked because instead of the NBA Hall of Fame, a lot of people call it the NBA Hall of Very Good because it's very easy to get in.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to see your opinion because I know there are two players I'm going to talk about in here that are questionable to some people's eyes of making the Hall of Fame. So I searched up top five iffy Hall of Famer candidates. I want to see your opinion. The two on the Miami Heat that I wanted to bring up to you are Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry. Jimmy Butler obviously has had great stats, but's never won anything. Where Kyle Lowry, I mean, he's averaged 15 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds in his career, and has one championship with the Raptors, and is also arguably the best Raptor of all time. So I want to see your opinion on those two.
Yeah, so I Hall of Fame is obviously you think of it, you think of the best players in history. Um, in my opinion, to be in the Hall of Fame, you got to have one of three things, either three plus MVPs, three plus 10 plus All-Stars and or an NBA championship. And then if you have the NBA championship, you got to be sort of one of the bigger players on that team. I think Kyle Lowry was, obviously, I think back when he was with the Raptors, I think he was still considered a star. You know, he was an all-star. Um, and he's just one of those players that everybody sort of wants on their team. You know, he's not the star he was now. He's coming off the bench from Miami. Um, but I think with his pedigree, I think he gets in, maybe not first ballot, but I do believe that NBA championship puts him over the top to get in. Obviously he's a multi-time All-Star. He's an NBA third team member. Um, I think he gets in. I Jimmy's thing is he doesn't have very many accolades. Sure, he's been a great player. He might go down as one of the best. He might be go down as into the instead of the Hall of Fame, the Hall of Great. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The
Hmm.
the great players that just don't make the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's why I think all five of these names I have for you are kind of interesting because you could make cases for all five of them getting in. You can make cases for all five of them getting out. Like you said, Jimmy Butler hasn't really done anything, but just we all know how good of a player he is, and I wouldn't be shocked if he gets in, but I can understand your
I could
take,
also
and I
be
do
being
agree.
biased on Lowry being a Raptors fan.
But I think just winning a championship with the Raptors, and a lot of people view him as the best Raptor of all time. Like that
He's
that
definitely
speaks
getting
a lot.
he's definitely number seven will definitely be in the Raptors
Yeah, for sure.
at the what is it, Scotiabank place?
Yeah, I don't know. They change the name all the time. Um, Another former Raptor that I want to bring up is Marc Gasol, who again won a championship with the Toronto Raptors. Had a lot of good runs with Memphis, never won it. Went to the conference finals with them, and also won Defensive Player of the Year in his career.
Yeah, I don't think he gets in. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes it into the International Basketball Hall of Fame because him and his brother were very good with Spain.
They've
They've won
won a lot
a
of medals.
lot of medals. So, International Basketball Hall of Fame, yes, NBA Hall of Fame. I think he misses out just based off. I don't think he was like players like him aren't flashy. You know, they don't get the big highlights. But he was always that great, like you said, defensive center. So I don't think he gets in personally.
Yeah, I mean, again, all five of these names I think are really interesting because there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with you, and there's going to be a lot of people who do agree with you. I mean, I can't say I'm on the fence with it because all these players we can be on the fence with, but I tend to lean your way just because defensive players don't get the recognition that they deserve. Like when you think of dominant big men,
Like you could make the same argument with Draymond Green. I think Green gets in just because of his championships.
yeah,
I think like these two players, not that they're similar because like one's 7'3" and the other's like a better passer, but I think like they don't get the whatever they deserve, like
recognition.
the show. I think Draymond will get in based off his championship. So
Yeah. It's funny you bring up the Golden State Warriors because my next player is
sorry.
Andre Iguodala,
Oh,
who has
Iggy.
won three championships with the Golden State Warriors. He won one of those playoff MVPs. A lot of people thought it should have been Steph Curry, but he took it. And he also had some big years with the 76ers.
I said Marcus Gasol won't get in. I think Marcus Gasol would have a better chance getting in than Iggy, so I'm gonna go no for Iggy. I think again he fits into that Hall of Great category where he's a great player, but like only won his championship sort of in his later years where he was sort of a more of a role player. He was never really like the number one guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm loving this conversation because they're all so iffy that we could totally disagree. And I kind of do. I think Iggy has a greater chance than Marc Gasol to get in just because I feel like championships speak volumes. And although a lot of people don't think he should have been the playoff MVP, he did win it. So that will go into his resume. And he did have I mean, we're a little young, but he had some really good years in Philly and was the guy there for a bit. To wrap it up, my last guy is Derrick Rose, who was the youngest MVP in league history and also won Rookie of the Year. but because of injuries, he only had really 4 of those seasons.
Yeah, I don't think it'll the Euros gets in. Just he's one of the greatest what ifs the sport of
100%.
NBA or
100.
sports in general will ever see. What if he doesn't tear his ACL there? Like you could give the argument that he could have been one of the best players of all time if he doesn't get injured, the way he was playing, the way he was controlling that Bulls team, but I don't think he gets in.
See, I kind of agree with you. Like a lot of people again are going to disagree with us there, but
I think if he doesn't get in though, he'd be the first ever league MVP not to get in.
yeah, the problem is he played 4 years, like 4 years, and he was amazing in those 4 years, rookie of the year, youngest MVP, but injuries killed him. He's finally back to playing ball, um, where he's actually getting minutes, and I mean, I feel like if he can win a championship and be a decent bench player on that championship team, he gives himself a shot, but at the current moment, like you said, he is the greatest. What if, like 99.9% sure would have been a Hall of Famer if he didn't get hurt, but
Agreed.
it's the nature of the game.
Yeah, but I think that'll do it for this episode. I think next week we might actually get off to a new sport. We might start talking about the NFL a bit
It's
as
dog days of summer.
it is the dog days of summer as mini camps in the NFL have started. So maybe we'll go through a bit of NFL talk. But if you guys enjoyed, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to never miss a weekly episode, and we will see you next week.
See ya.